Dre left, so now I'm on my own. Anyways, so when it comes to online advertising, we have Google ad campaigns. And Google ad campaigns, there's some different ways you can go about this. There's smart ads, and smart ads are kind of like a do-it-yourself ad campaign where you can actually go on, create an account, create a Google AdWords account, do the smart ads. It has a very simplistic way that you could create ads and set a budget and set an area and set certain search terms and create like your ad listings through the smart ads. Now, there's a much more complex way, which I do not recommend, which is your generic or general Google ad campaigns. And this is kind of like somewhere where you really would want to get into this more so with a marketing agency that does this professionally. So reaching out to a marketing agency that might do pay-per-click, and then understanding things like your cost per conversions, right? So you might have this pay-per-click where it's like, all right, it costs you, $3 for every click, right? And then that $3, or it might be $5 for every click. It might depend on the area, but you will only know what the true cost of this is because adult daycare is not nationally recognized to the point where there's a ton of data out there on adult daycare, especially in the private pay space. It's hard for us to go and say, okay, the typical term for the word adult daycare costs X. Now, you could do this with assisted living, you could do this with home care, because they have a much greater search volume. You could learn and find out like, okay, assisted living in this area typically costs $40 per click, right? And it might be that expensive because you're competing with Brookdale and these larger facilities. But on home care might cost this much because you're competing with Home Instead and Right at Home and all these large home care agencies, right? So when you think about pay-per-click in the adult daycare space, it's actually going to be in your favor at this stage. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when more adult daycare centers have come into the marketplace, this obviously will continue to go up as the demand for people willing to spend money on pay-per-click advertising goes up. But right now it's relatively inexpensive. But it's not just what the pay-per-click cost is, it's really what your cost per conversion. So the cost per conversion now would be like, say I spend $1,000 a month on Google Ads, right? So if I spend $1,000 a month on Google Ads and I convert 30 of those people, what would that be, right? Let's do the math. So $1,000 divided by 30, that would be that every single conversion, right? So this conversion, this lead would cost you $33, right? So every lead would cost you $33. Is that lead worth $33? Or depending on how you measure conversions, sometimes you might have the pay-per-click, and this is all depends on how your website's set up, but you might have pay-per-click campaigns where you're spending X dollars, right? And then you're kind of giving an average pay-per-click of X, which might be $5 per click or $10 per click or whatever the case might be. And then the conversion, depending on how you measure it, might be two different things. It might be that they submitted like the form on your website, and that might be considered a conversion. This really depends on how you're measuring it and how whatever marketing firm you hire is measuring it. So if they filled out the form, maybe it was $33 for them to fill out the form. So that got them to give you, now you have their information, but they haven't become a member or a participant yet. Now, say you get, I think what we just do, we talk about 30 conversions, where we're talking about conversions where they converted because they filled out a form. But maybe out of those 30, only, let's say 5 out of those 30 actually become a member. Now that would be like your acquisition cost of the lead, okay? And so in that scenario, so we did, we said 5, right? 5 out of those 30, so 5, let's see here. So $1,000 spent divided by 5 would be $200. So just to kind of like walk back through the math. So we might have pay-per-click of somewhere between $3 and $5 per click. Now, out of $1,000 spent, maybe 30 people fill out the form. So that's your conversion, right? You converted the clicks into someone actually giving you their information. So now 30 people have to fill out the form. And then out of those 30 people that fill out the form, maybe 5 become a participant. Now that's your acquisition cost, right? So you got $3 to $5 for pay-per-click. You got $30 to $33 for the cost of the actual lead. So you have their information. And then the new member who became a participant in your adult daycare maybe cost $200 based on that whole kind of like funnel that we just walked through, right? So understanding that is very important, okay? And then another thing to understand is important, and I see a lot of people do this, they'll be like, oh, we're gonna spend X on social media. Well, social media is not really a lead. Like, people don't go on social media to search for adult daycare or search for the service that they need. Like, have you ever gone on Facebook and said, like, unless you're like using Facebook Marketplace, have you ever gone on Facebook to search for someone? Probably not. More than likely, like you were introduced to a new product, or like usually you're going to social media to be entertained. And especially in the senior care space, you're not going to social media to actually to actually like learn, to search, to find out about a service, right? You're gonna go to Google for that. You're gonna go to Google, you're gonna go to Yahoo, you're gonna go to Bing, or wherever you search, right? So what you could do is you could create an awareness campaign in like a Facebook or an Instagram or another social media campaign, and we'll get into the details of like why this is more of an awareness piece. You could spend money on creating awareness, something fun, entertaining, funny, something like that on the Facebook side of things. And then you use a pixel, which is just a line of code that you embed on your website, or you embed as part of your kind of your Google ad spend. Okay, and that pixel that's tied to Facebook. Now, if someone were to ever click on that that link or watch that video or do something over here, now they're going to see everything on Google, right? So they might see everything on. Oh, sorry. I got this whole freaking thing backwards. I apologize. All right, let's reverse. I don't know. I got a little sidetrack there. Let's reverse. Okay, if you are retargeting, what you're doing is you're taking the Facebook pixel, you're tying it to your Google ad. Okay, and so what you're doing is you're spending money on your Google advertising, okay? And that money that you spend on Google advertising now, when say they were searching for adult daycare, okay? And they something came up and they clicked on your website, right? Now this pixel is actually embedded on your website, okay? And so basically it puts a tag on that internet browser, on that phone. So now when you go to your social media, you're gonna start to see all those things. This is like, if you've ever looked for something maybe on like an Amazon before, you search something on the web, and then next thing you know, you see it in your Amazon account, or you see it in your Facebook or your Instagram, or all over, all these different accounts. That's called retargeting, right? So the reason why I like this is because you're spending money on some, on ads, because someone is in need of the services you're offering. So adult daycare, so you're spending money on that, right? So you spend money on Google ads, but then you retarget that same person that was searching for adult daycare services. You retarget them on, say, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or these other channels using whatever line of code that they have been able to provide you. Okay, and in Facebook's case, it's called a pixel, right? So the cool part about that is now when you're spending money on platforms like Facebook, you're not spending money to try to generate new leads, because it's a hard platform to generate new leads on. What you're doing is you're spending money on people that already search for your services. You're just reminding them of who you are. And like, I think it's Tony Robbins says it takes 16 impressions for someone to really truly recognize a brand. Now this has continued to increase as we have more and more platforms out there, and more and more access to all these different apps and stuff like that. This has continued to increase. There was a time where it only took 4 impressions, but now it takes 16. So I need to see your logo. I need to see your services like 16 times before I, as a consumer, am actually going to recognize or be able to remember that brand. So very important.